Admiral Han Wu felt his heart beating slowly as he sat in his big command chair. The room around him was filled with Earth's most important leaders, all watching a blue light that showed the shape of an alien standing before them. This alien was not like anything humans had ever seen before. Ambassador Veltar was huge, maybe 3 times taller than any human. His skin looked like green and black scales that moved and changed color when he talked. His yellow eyes were cold and mean, like a snake looking at a mouse it wanted to eat. When he opened his mouth to speak, everyone could see rows of sharp teeth and a long tongue that moved like it was tasting something bad. "Listen carefully, humans," Veltar said, his voice making a scary hissing sound. "Your time in space is over. You have exactly 48 hours to pack up and leave 37 star systems. Take your people, take your ships, and go back where you came from." The alien moved closer to the camera, and his big head filled most of the screen. His scales were now bright red, showing how angry and proud he felt. "The Galactic Hegemony has been watching you for too long. We are tired of seeing your kind spread like some kind of disease across our galaxy." Defense Minister Park Hana was sitting next to Admiral Han Wu. She had short black hair and wore a dark blue uniform with many medals on it. Her hands were folded on the table, but everyone could see they were shaking just a little bit. Still, when she spoke, her voice was strong and clear. "What happens if we say no?" she asked. "What if our people don't want to leave their homes?" Veltar's laugh was the worst sound anyone in that room had ever heard. It was like metal being twisted and broken, mixed with the sound of something dying. His tongue came out of his mouth and moved around in the air, like he was trying to taste their fear. "Then we will burn every single one of your colonies," he said, and now his voice was quiet but somehow more scary than when he was loud. "We have watched your little ships flying around space. You have maybe a few hundred vessels that you call a fleet. We have thousands. Our ships are bigger, stronger, and have weapons that could turn your entire planet into dust." The alien's eyes got brighter like fires burning in the dark. "You humans think you are so smart, so special, but you are just children playing with toys you don't understand. You should have stayed on that dirty little planet you call Earth and never tried to reach for the stars." Other council members were looking at each other with worried faces. Some were writing notes. Others were touching their computers, probably trying to figure out how many ships and people they would need to move in just 2 days. But Admiral Han Wu just sat there, not moving, not showing any emotion on his face. "Your answer?" Veltar demanded. "Will you leave like good little creatures, or do we need to teach you a lesson that will be remembered for 1,000 years?" The connection ended with a sharp sound that made everyone jump. The blue light disappeared, and suddenly the room felt very quiet and very cold. For a long minute, nobody said anything. They all knew that this was the moment that would decide if humans would survive in space or be destroyed completely. Finally, Admiral Han Wu turned in his chair to look at the other people in the room. His face was calm, but there was something in his eyes that looked almost like he was smiling, even though his mouth wasn't moving. "They have no idea," he said quietly, and his voice had a strange tone that made everyone pay attention. "They really have no idea what's coming." Defense Minister Park Hana looked confused. "Sir, what do you mean? We only have a few hundred ships. How can we fight thousands of alien vessels?" Han Wu stood up slowly and walked to the big window that showed the stars outside. Earth looked beautiful and peaceful, spinning slowly in the darkness. But somewhere out there, alien fleets were getting ready to destroy everything humans had built among those stars. "For 20 years, Han Wu said, still looking out the window, "we have been getting ready for this day. While they thought we were just simple creatures learning to fly in space, we were working, building, planning, preparing for the moment when someone would try to take away our future." He turned around to face the room, and now everyone could see that he was definitely smiling. It was not a happy smile, but the smile of someone who knew a secret that would change everything. "They think they know everything about humans," he continued. "They think we are weak because we are young. They think we are stupid because we are different. But they are about to learn something that will shake their entire galaxy." The room was completely silent now. Everyone was waiting to hear what their admiral knew that they didn't. They are about to learn why humans are the most dangerous species in the galaxy. Captain Li Jin stood on the bridge of her ship, the Morning Star, watching something that looked like complete chaos, but was actually the most carefully planned operation in human history. Through the big windows of her vessel, she could see thousands and thousands of ships flying away from human colonies scattered across the edge of the galaxy. To anyone watching from far away, especially the aliens, it looked exactly like what they expected to see. Scared humans running away from their homes, packing up their families and belongings, fleeing like frightened animals before the big bad aliens could come and hurt them. Ships of all sizes were moving in what seemed like panic, some going fast, some going slow, some even bumping into each other like they were in such a hurry they couldn't fly straight. But Li Jin knew the truth, and it made her smile in a way that would have scared those aliens if they could see it. "Commander Kim Soo, give me a status report," she said, her fingers moving quickly across the glowing buttons and screens in front of her. The tactical display showed thousands of dots moving across space, each one representing a ship that was supposedly running away in terror. Kim Soo was a short man with thick glasses who looked more like a teacher than a military officer, but he was one of the smartest people in the human fleet. He looked at his computer screen, and his smile got even bigger than his captain's. 700 manufacturing stations are working as fast as they can, he reported, his voice excited but trying to stay professional. The alien intelligence. Networks are completely fooled. Their spies are sending reports back saying that we're running scared, just like they expected us to do. What the aliens didn't know, what their spies couldn't see, was that this wasn't an evacuation at all. This was the biggest military mobilization that had ever happened in the entire galaxy, and it was happening right under their noses. For 20 years, humans had been preparing for this exact moment. While the aliens thought they were watching, a young species learned to build simple spaceships and set up basic colonies. Humans had actually been creating the most massive secret military operation anyone could imagine. Deep in asteroid fields where no alien patrol ever bothered to look, giant factories had been working day and night for decades. These weren't the small shipyards that aliens knew about. These were enormous automated facilities that could build hundreds of warships every single day. They were hidden inside asteroids that looked like just boring space rocks from the outside, but inside they were buzzing with activity. In nebula clouds that were too dangerous for most species to enter, more secret bases had been operating for years. The colorful gas and dust that made these areas beautiful also made them perfect hiding spots. Alien sensors couldn't see through the thick clouds, so they had no idea that massive shipyards were hidden inside, churning out vessel after vessel. Right now, at this very moment, sleek warships were rolling off production lines in numbers that would make the aliens' heads spin if they knew about it. Each ship was painted black as space itself, with no markings, no names, no identification numbers. They were like ghosts, floating in the darkness, waiting for their moment to become the aliens' worst nightmare. The beautiful thing about the plan was how simple it was. Every human colony had practiced this fake evacuation dozens of times over the years. They called it emergency relocation drills and told everyone it was just in case of natural disasters like solar flares or asteroid strikes. But really, they were practicing for this exact day. Families weren't actually running away in panic. They were moving in organized groups to predetermined safe zones that had been set up years ago. These safe zones had food, water, medical supplies, and most importantly, they were in places where the families would be protected when the fighting started. While the families moved to safety, something else was happening that the aliens couldn't. See, military assets were shifting into attack formations. Ships that looked like they were fleeing in random directions were actually moving to specific coordinates, where they would meet up with the secret fleets that were about to emerge from their hiding spots. Li Jin watched her tactical display as thousands of dots moved across the screen in what looked like chaos, but was actually a perfectly coordinated dance. Every captain knew exactly where to go, exactly when to be there, and exactly what to do when the time came. "The aliens are so arrogant," Kim Soo said, shaking his head as he read the intercepted alien communications. "Their commanders are laughing about how cowardly humans are. They're taking bets on how fast we'll run when they show up with their fleets." "Let them laugh," Li Jin replied, her voice cold as space itself. "They think they know everything about humans because we're a young species. They think being older makes them smarter. But they're about to learn that humans aren't just survivors." She turned to look at her crew. and every person on the bridge had the same expression on their face. It was the look of people who had been underestimated their entire lives, who had been called weak and primitive and stupid, but who knew they were about to prove everyone wrong. "We're strategists," Li Jin continued, "and we've been planning this for 20 years. Admiral Han Wu stood perfectly still on the bridge of his flagship, the Defiant Dawn, as space itself seemed to bend and twist around them. The hyperspace jump was almost complete, and he could feel the excitement building in every human heart across 47 different star systems. What was about to happen had never been seen before in the entire history of the galaxy. The bridge around him was buzzing with quiet activity. Officers were checking their stations, making sure every system was working perfectly. The lights on the control panels were blinking in steady patterns, showing that everything was ready. But Han Wu could see something else in the faces of his crew. They looked nervous and excited at the same time, like children about to reveal the biggest surprise ever. Navigator Choi Min was a young woman with steady hands and sharp eyes who had been plotting hyperspace jumps for the human fleet for years. She looked at her instruments one more time, then turned to face her admiral with a big smile on her face. "Jump complete, sir," she announced, and her voice was trying to sound professional, but everyone could hear how thrilled she was. "All fleets, report ready status across all 47 star systems." Han Wu nodded and walked slowly toward the massive windows at the front of the bridge. What he was about to see was something that 20 years of planning, building, and hoping had led up to. As he looked out into space, even he, who had planned this moment for so long, felt his breath catch in his throat. The sight was so overwhelming that it was hard to believe it was real. 700,000 human warships were materializing from hyperspace all at the same time, appearing like magic in perfect formation across dozens of star systems. The ships seemed to stretch out forever in every direction, their metal hulls catching the light from nearby stars and gleaming like deadly jewels against the black of space. There were small, fast fighter ships that looked like angry wasps ready to strike. There were medium-sized cruisers that bristled with weapons and armor. And there were massive dreadnoughts, enormous vessels that were bigger than some space stations, each one carrying enough firepower to destroy an entire planet. Every single ship was painted in dark colors that made them blend with space itself. But now they were lit up by their own engines and weapon systems, making them visible like a constellation of war machines. They moved together like they were dancing, each captain knowing exactly where to be and when to be there. Han Wu opened the communication channels that would send his voice to every alien fleet in the region. He knew that right now, on Alien, command ships scattered across multiple star systems, enemy commanders were staring at their sensors and trying to figure out if their equipment was broken. He wanted to make sure they understood that what they were seeing was very, very real. "This is Admiral Han Wu of the United Earth Defense Force," he said, and his voice was calm but carried the weight of 700,000 warships behind. "You wanted to see what happens when humanity is cornered. You thought we were weak because we are young. You thought we were stupid because we are different." He paused for a moment, looking out at the incredible fleet that surrounded his flagship. Ships as far as the eye could see, each one crewed by humans who had spent their entire lives preparing for this moment. Today, you learn why we're called the most dangerous species in the galaxy. Meanwhile, on alien command ships throughout the region, veteran commanders who had fought in wars for centuries were staring at their sensor screens like they couldn't believe what they were seeing. These were aliens who had conquered dozens of species, who had never lost a major battle, who thought they knew everything about warfare. Commander Zal Kresh of the Hegemony Third Fleet had been fighting battles for over 200 years. He had seen the rise and fall of entire civilizations. But as he looked at his tactical display, his forearms were shaking and his scaled face had turned pale with fear. "How many ships are we detecting?" he asked his sensor officer, hoping that somehow the number would be smaller when he heard it spoken out loud. 700,000, sir," came the reply. "And that's just what we can see clearly. There might be more hiding in the sensor shadows." Zal Kresh's veteran crew, aliens who had never shown fear in battle before, were looking at each other with expressions of complete shock. The humans they had been laughing about just hours ago, the species they had called primitive and weak, had just revealed a military force that was 10 times larger than the entire hegemony fleet combined. The command ship of the hegemony's main fleet, Ambassador Veltar, was standing in front of a massive screen showing the human fleet. Just yesterday he had been laughing about how easy it would be to destroy the pathetic human colonies. His confident hiss, the sound that had terrified so many species before, was now just a whisper that barely anyone could hear. "Impossible," he whispered, his forked tongue barely moving. "This is impossible. How did they hide so many ships? How did they build so many ships? We've been watching them for decades." But it wasn't impossible. It was just proof that the aliens had made the biggest mistake any species could make. They had underestimated humanity. The moment the battle began, it became clear that everything the aliens thought they knew about warfare was completely wrong. Captain Oyon was flying her small fighter ship through space in ways that made no sense to the alien commanders watching from their big vessels. Her squadron of 24 fighters moved like a swarm of angry bees, darting in and out of the alien formations with a speed and unpredictability that was driving the enemy crazy. "Listen up, everyone," Oyeon said into her radio, speaking to all the pilots following her lead. "Forget everything you learned in training about proper battle formations and honorable combat. These aliens came here to burn our families alive. This isn't about honor anymore. This is about making sure our children have a future." Her fighters split apart and came at the alien ships from 12 different directions at once. The alien crews had spent centuries learning how to fight battles, where both sides lined up in neat rows and took turns shooting at each other, like some kind of deadly dance with rules that everyone followed. But humans weren't following any rules. Oyeon's fighter dove under a massive alien cruiser, so close that she could see the individual panels on its hull. She fired her weapons at what looked like sensor arrays, not trying to destroy the ship but to blind it. Then she spun her fighter around and shot at the engine ports, not to disable the engines, but to make them work poorly and unpredictably. "Target their eyes first, then their legs," she told her squadron, using simple words that every pilot could understand even in the heat of battle. "Make them scared, make them confused, then make them sorry they ever threatened us." The alien ship she had just attacked was now spinning slowly, its sensors damaged and its engines misfiring. The crew inside was probably panicking, trying to figure out how a tiny human fighter had managed to cripple their massive warship in just a few seconds. All across the battlefield, human ships were doing things that broke every rule of space. Combat that had existed for thousands of years. They didn't stay in formation. They didn't attack the strongest parts of enemy ships first. They didn't give their opponents time to surrender honorably. Instead, they moved like wild animals, striking from impossible angles, hitting weak spots that other species considered unfair to target, and using psychological warfare that left alien crews terrified and unable to think clearly. Commander Yoon Tae was leading a group of 6 human destroyer ships against a hegemony battleship that was 5 times bigger than all of his vessels combined. In any normal battle, his small ships wouldn't stand a chance against such a massive enemy vessel. But this wasn't a normal battle. "Spread out and circle around it," Yoon Tae ordered his captains. "Don't attack it head-on like they expect. Hit it from the sides and back where their weapons can't reach us easily." The alien battleship was built like a floating fortress, with thick armor and powerful weapons designed to fight other big ships in formal battles. But it was slow and clumsy, designed for the kind of warfare where opponents faced each other directly and traded shots until one side gave up or was destroyed. Yoon Tae's destroyers danced around the huge alien ship like wolves circling a bear. They fired their weapons at the battleship's communication arrays, cutting off its ability to talk to other alien ships. They targeted its sensor systems, making it blind and deaf. They hit its docking bays where smaller ships were stored, causing explosions that spread throughout the vessel. "Target their command structure," Yoon Tae said, his voice cold as ice. "I want the officers on that ship to know exactly what it feels like to be helpless and scared." His ships concentrated their fire on the part of the battleship where the alien commanders were located. The goal wasn't just to destroy the ship, but to make sure that any aliens who survived would remember this moment for the rest of their lives. The massive battleship, which had seemed so powerful and intimidating just minutes before, was now drifting helplessly through space. Its shields had been overwhelmed in seconds by the combined firepower of the human destroyers. Its weapons were offline, its engines were damaged, and somewhere inside that floating wreck, alien officers who had been laughing about weak humans were now probably crying and begging their gods to save them. This same scene was happening in dozens of star systems at the same time. Human fleets were tearing apart alien formations with tactics that seemed crazy, but were actually brilliant. While alien dreadnoughts moved through space like slow, ancient monsters, human ships buzzed around them like angry hornets, stinging them to death with 1,000 small attacks. The aliens had expected a formal battle where both sides would line up and fight according to the rules of civilized warfare. Instead, they were facing an enemy that fought like their lives depended on it, because their lives really did depend on it. As reports of the battle spread across the galaxy's communication networks, a new phrase began appearing in alien messages. It wasn't "the humans are fighting bravely," or "the humans are stronger than we thought." The phrase that spread from ship to ship, from planet to planet, was much simpler and much more terrifying. "The humans are coming." These 3 words weren't spoken with excitement or curiosity. They were whispered in pure primal terror by aliens who had just realized that they had awakened something that should have been left alone. The humans weren't just defending their colonies anymore. They were hunting down every alien ship that had dared to threaten their families, and they were doing it with a fury that shook the entire galaxy. 3 days after the battle ended, Admiral Han Wu walked into the largest conference room on the space station orbiting Earth. This room had seen many important meetings before, but never one quite like this. Sitting around the enormous table were representatives from every alien species that had been part of the Galactic Hegemony, the same organization that had threatened to burn human colonies just a week ago. But these aliens looked very different now than they had during their threatening messages. Ambassador Veltar, who had been so confident and scary when he delivered the ultimatum, was now sitting with his head down, his scales a dull gray color that showed fear and shame. His hands were shaking slightly as he tried to drink from a cup of water. The other alien delegates weren't doing much better. Commander Zalkresh, who had led one of the largest alien fleets, had bandages covering wounds from when his ship had been damaged in the battle. His forearms were folded in front of him in a way that made him look like he was trying to protect himself from something. A tall, blue-skinned alien named Council Leader Mortan kept looking around the room nervously, like she expected human soldiers to come marching in at any moment. Her species had been part of the hegemony for over 1,000 years, and they had never lost a major battle before. Now she looked like a child who had been caught doing something very wrong and was waiting to be punished. Admiral Han Wu took his seat at the head of the table and looked at each alien representative for a long moment before speaking. When he finally opened his mouth, his voice was quiet and calm, but somehow that made his words even more powerful than if he had been shouting. "We could conquer your worlds," he said, and every alien in the room flinched like they had been hit. "We have 700,000 warships, and you've seen what they can do. We could turn your beautiful cities into piles of melted glass. We could hunt down every one of your fleets and turn them into floating scrap metal." The room was completely silent, except for the sound of some aliens breathing heavily, like they were having trouble getting enough air. Ambassador Veltar's forked tongue came out of his mouth nervously, tasting the air that now seemed thick with fear. "But that's not who we are," Han Wu continued, and now there was something almost sad in his voice. "That's not who humans are. We don't want to rule over other species. We don't want to destroy your planets or make your people suffer." Ambassador Park So-young, who had been Earth's top diplomat for many years, stood up from her chair and walked to stand beside Admiral Han Wu. She was a small woman compared to most of the aliens in the room, but she carried herself with a confidence that made her seem much larger. Her diplomatic credentials, which used to be just pieces of paper, were now backed by the largest military force the galaxy had ever seen. "Humanity seeks only peace and the right to exist among the stars," she said, looking directly at each alien representative. "We tried diplomacy first. We sent peaceful messages. We offered to share trade and knowledge. We asked nicely to be left alone to build our colonies and raise our families. She paused and let her words sink in before continuing. Remember that. When you tell the story of what happened here, remember that we tried to solve this peacefully. You were the ones who chose violence. You were the ones who threatened to burn our homes and kill our children. Outside the conference room windows, something amazing was happening that would be talked about for centuries to come. The 700,000 human warships that had appeared like magic during the battle were now slowly disappearing back into the darkness of space. They didn't vanish all at once, but gradually, like stars going out one by one as dawn approaches. But even though the ships were leaving, their legend was staying behind. Every alien in the galaxy now knew that humans possessed a military force that could crush any opposition. More importantly, they knew that humans were willing to use that force if anyone threatened their families again. Within just a few months, the mighty galactic hegemony, which had ruled large parts of the galaxy for thousands of years, completely fell apart. The different alien species that had been part of it were now scrambling to contact Earth and set up their own individual peace treaties with humanity. Some aliens offered trade agreements, hoping to buy human friendship with valuable goods. Others offered to share their technology or scientific knowledge. A few even offered to become protectorates of Earth, basically asking humans to protect them from other threats in exchange for loyalty. But the most important change was something that couldn't be written down in any treaty or agreement. Throughout the galaxy, on every alien world, in every space station, on every ship, a new phrase had become the most important rule of interstellar relations: never threaten a human's family. This wasn't just a suggestion or a guideline. It had become the first and most sacred law of how species dealt with each other in space. Even alien children were taught this phrase before they learned anything else about other species. The galaxy had learned a truth that would never be forgotten. Humanity's greatest strength wasn't their advanced technology, though their ships were impressive. It wasn't their large numbers, though 700,000 warships was more than anyone had imagined possible. Their greatest strength was something much simpler and much more dangerous. Humans were willing to go to any length, pay any price, and fight any enemy to protect the people they loved. In the vast darkness of space, those 700,000 ships were still out there, hidden but ready. They were crewed by humans who understood something that the aliens had learned too late. Sometimes, the only way to make sure your family can live in peace is to be prepared for war. The trembling that had begun when the human fleet first appeared would never truly end. From now on, whenever any alien species looked up at the stars, they would remember that somewhere in that darkness, human ships were watching and waiting, ready to defend their own.